Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Today, I want us to talk about how Scientology is for selfish people. Scientology is literally the breeding ground, the factory to create selfishness and foolishness. Now, I've been thinking about this a lot, guys, because as you know, I've been studying Scientology. By the way, guys, sorry that my footage from New York has not come out. I'm wondering if, in wisdom, I shouldn't post it. For some reasons I'm not going to get into right now. But I'll at least share a good chunk of it because there's some interesting things to be talking about that I heard and I saw that you guys can see. Anyway, so I want to talk about this because one of the things that I was thinking about in my own life and my own time with God was that there is such an importance of actually counting the cost. I talked about this in a video recently about how in life, the decisions we make, it's an important process for us to actually stop and think about the consequences of our actions. Because obviously we'll have to deal with them, right? Now, one thing I didn't like about Scientology that I've seen both from visiting in New York, in America, both from going there in Edinburgh, in Scotland. Why have I not gone in England? Like, I need to go to freaking Scientology in England. Why have I literally not taken the advantage to do that? Anyway, stay tuned. No, but seriously, that's not a bad idea. Anyway, stay focused. Stay focused. Okay. And also just from studying it, interacting with the different things that they've given, the different, materials and everything, listening to people's stories. One of the things that I've noticed is that Scientology has this focus of removing your reactive mind. That's what we're doing, right? Essentially, whatever your problem is, whatever it is, whatever you're struggling with, chances are it's to do with your reactive mind and removing your reactive mind. Now, I want to first of all, the issue I have with this is the fact that Scientology is essentially saying that we want to get you to a place where you'll completely have clarity and you don't even second guess stuff. You just go for what you want to go for. We'll come back to why that's problematic in the Scientological sense in a moment. But just run with me for a second. I have said before, and I'll say it again, I'm saying this for the sake of people who might be watching my videos on Scientology for the first time, that overall, the concept that we go through painful and traumatic things that change the way we behave and we therefore react because of our past or our experiences versus due to our logic, for example, because in Scientology, they talk about the difference between your analytical mind and your reactive mind. I agree that with the idea that that is a genuine human issue that we can all observe, that the things that we go through cause for us to react and respond in a certain type of way differently after those things have happened. Things can trigger our experiences and it does change our decision making. And sometimes, if not a lot of times, for the worse. So as the devil always does, there is a lot of truth inside the lie. So I get that. I agree with that. I'm not going to get into my thoughts of all of that in more further depth for now because I've done loads of videos and I will do more. Check out my Scientology playlist. However, the other thing we need to take into account is this idea of, because I remember it was L Ron Hubbard actually said this in an interview because I heard him say it because I like to watch interviews of people because then you know what they actually think. Like, I like to hear things from the horse's mouth, as they say. Because you can hold somebody to their words. If it's something that somebody else said about somebody, then it's like, well, that's wasn't what they meant. This is what he said. That people have a barrier between getting from A to B. They want to do something. From them wanting to doing something and doing it, there is something that stops them, right? And this thing that stops them is what he wants to remove, help people to remove, so they get straight from A all the way to B. Straight from I want to do this to just doing it. Yay, great, because a lot of us might struggle with overthinking, overanalyzing, anxiety, lack of, confidence, all that type of stuff. That's why I find it fascinating as well that Scientology has decided to focus so strongly on clarity, because that was the thing that comes out in all the discussions I had when I had a discussion in Edinburgh, when I had a discussion in New York City. It was the same thing. Clarity. When you do this will help you to gain clarity in your life. Right. Now, the issue I have with this is quite simply that in terms of getting from A to B, sometimes it's actually good to stop and think about why we're not rushing straight to B. As in, I'm going to use a very wild example. Brace yourselves, but it's going to drive home my point very well. In fact, I'll give you a simple example first, and then I'll go for the extreme one. A simple example could be you at work have been working super hard. You've saved up loads and loads and loads of money, and you go out shopping. Normally, you wouldn't spend more than, let's say, £40 on, I don't know, a t-shirt. Just making up random examples. Now you've done Scientology. Now you got clarity. You're not second guessing anything. You're just going for it. You go in the shops. There is a t-shirt for £70 and you're like, I'm doing it. I can afford it. I've been saving up money to be able to do whatever. And I'm going for it. Cool. But when that same notion is applied in other situations, we can see how it can become problematic. Because if you're a predator, if you're a man or woman, you see somebody you think is attractive, and then you immediately have the same logic of, I'm just going to go for it. I'm going to just force myself, because what I want from them, I want to have sex with them, so I'm going to just take it. Problematic all of a sudden, isn't it? Problematic. And I know that it sounds like such an extreme example. The only reason I'm even entertaining this example is because L Ron Hubbard himself talked about how Scientology will work the better for you, but it's a matter of perspective, the example that he used, again, that I heard from his mouth in an interview, was that he specifically was thinking, he said, if you're a duck hunter and you go and kill a duck, from your perspective, you are doing what is right for you. You went straight from A to B. Okay? But from the duck's perspective, you're a bad person. So he's acknowledging, and this is why I think he's extremely highly intelligent, because things like this go over a lot of people's heads, what I'm about to say. People who say stuff like this, show me exactly who they are when they say stuff like this, because what he's saying is, you can be the villain in someone's story. In fact, what I am encouraging will create you to be the villain in some people's story. Now, don't get me wrong. There are many situations in life where that might be the case. Case in point, just being a winner. I've talked about this a lot recently. That when you are at first place, immediately you've made an enemy potentially out of second and third and everybody else, because they wanted to be first as well. Right? So you might be the villain in their story for some reason. Right? That's a different thing. But the point is, when we have these vague things, and it's the vagueness of Scientology in and of itself that bothers me. It's the vagueness, because God is highly specific in the Bible. He's very highly specific, and I appreciate his specificity because it shows that he's not just trying to leave things up. Because what I feel like L Ron Hubbard was doing when he said that was he was essentially saying, letting it be free, like with my first two examples. Because in most people, in a lot of people's minds, when he says something like that, they'll be thinking more about the first scenario of what I said. Of you're in a shop, you normally wouldn't spend more than £40 on a t-shirt, but now you decide to spend £70 on a t-shirt. Because you've been listening to Scientology and you have clarity. And you're not stopping between A and B. You're not stopping between what you want and actually doing it. You're going straight there. Fine. In those scenarios, I think we're all happy with that. I think that's fine, right? But when applied, and bearing in mind that once again, I just want to point out, and I talked about this at length in one of my first Scientology videos, that L Ron Hubbard himself believes he was Cecil Rhodes in his past life, What did Cecil Rhodes do? Well, I talked about that in detail in that video, so go check it out. I went through all the exact like details in that video. What does that mean? It means that Cecil Rhodes, who became a member of the government that was colonizing what is now Zimbabwe and Zambia, which was once Rhodesia, right? Not very long ago, that's who L Ron Hubbard believes he was in his past life. So again, and as somebody who is from Rhodesia, as somebody who is Zimbabwean and Zambian, I feel like I have a really unique opinion about this type of stuff, right? Because this is when it's actually insane that my surname is quite literally Zimba, by the way. So when I'm looking at the situation, obviously, I'm thinking, I'm not even going to look at it from like a victimhood so-called mentality. I'm just going to look at it for what it is. In a purely logical, open-ended basis. Purely logical, open-ended basis is that you have a man who moved somewhere. So Cecil Rhodes ended up in Rhodesia in the first place because he was ill and the climate and everything there was better for the illness he had. Turns out he ends up working and whatnot. Turns out he realizes that we got diamonds up in there. We got diamonds up in the ground all over there. We got diamonds, we got gold, right? And then he decides to capitalize off of that, gets very mega rich, and that company still exists to today. I believe it's called De Beers, if I'm not mistaken. And that's what happened. Now, the reason why I just want to say this while we're all here, because I want people to be like, oh no, the white people came to the black country. We can't really say a lot of that type of stuff when a lot of us are now living in Western society doing certain things. I know some people are going to be like, oh yeah, but that's because we are coming back to get what happened to us. Well, listen, if life's a game, let's play to win. We all need to bust up and step up. I'm learning my lessons. Basically, in the future, I know for myself, if I have something and if I'm going to always be prepared that there could be somebody trying to come and take what I'm doing or where I am at and whatever, and protect myself and not just think that I'm just going to exist in life and nothing's going to happen and then complain when I wasn't prepared for something that took place. But anyways, I know people are not going to like that. I just said that. Don't really care though. Yeah. So if that's the guy that L Ron Hubbard believes he was in his past life, it's an exact example of what I just said. Even though I just gave you guys my honest opinion about my perspective on the situation, essentially Cecil Rhodes was prepared to become wealthy and prepared to take hold and do all these things, colonize the country. When I say the colonization, guys, it's not just about the diamonds. Like my own very own parents, who went to school in Zimbabwe, were the first to go to the A schools, because there were A schools which were for white people and then B schools which were for the blacks and others and whatever. So they were the first to go to the A schools. So this isn't in like 1,000 years ago. Okay, my parents are quite young, if you ask me. They're in their early 50s. So, you know, that's what we're dealing with here. These people, Cecil Rhodes, so this is a Cecil Rhodes and whatever, right? And so all of this was defeated by Robert Mugabe. So it's a whole long thing, this whole whatever. My point is that from the perspective of Cecil Rhodes, he is just doing with clarity what he wants to do. All I'm saying is there are consequences, and all I'm saying is in Scientology, the consequences are something that don't become accounted for necessarily, right? And so what happens, I believe, now with Scientology, and I can actually now fully understand how a lot of celebrities end up into Scientology. I can understand why it is so easy. Well, also because it's basically a nothing of everything. As in, they don't claim to be anything. It's a religion of religions. Even when I was talking to the lady from New York City, she was like, oh yeah, like, what was she saying to me? She was saying to me how like anybody can support them and they're not like only one religion, and they're not just, they're a religion of religions. Like I said, that's what they say. They're a religion of religions. What do they believe? Even when L Ron Hubbard was asked, what do you believe is good and wrong, good and bad? He's like, I believe what everybody else thinks is good and bad. How many times have I told you guys that that's not a way to think? Because we all have different perceptions of good and bad. This is why I trust in God of the Bible, because at least he makes things clear. In Scientology, it's like what everybody else believes is good and bad, but we all have different thoughts about what's good and bad, right? You have people who will say lying is always wrong. You have other people say, well, I think lying is appropriate if you're protecting somebody's feelings, or I think lying is appropriate when it's a white lie, or I think lying is appropriate when you're talking to children, and all these different things. You'll have people that say stealing is always wrong. You'll have other people are going to be like, well, stealing is fine if you're stealing from the rich and giving it to the poor and your name is Robin Hood, and stealing is okay when when, you know what I'm saying? Or let's use the example of today. Stealing is okay when I'm a black person living in the patriarch in the racism of the Western society, and I'm just gonna walk into stores and just be stealing stuff straight from the shelves and rioting and looting because I'm a victim. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, if we don't have a framework, or a specific framework and a specific boundary set, then lawlessness will take place, because there are consequences to actions. There are forces that are being balanced. This is why I love that me and L Ron Hubbard ironically have so many things in common, despite the fact that he essentially is a white man, an older white man in the time of what we're talking about, which is ironic, right? This background in science, all these different types of things, and the observations of humanity, because I love to observe humans. It's something that I love to do the most in life. I just think we're really interesting species to observe, more than any other species, to be honest. And so I find it fascinating to see that he is encouraging this as some kind of, like I said, this is what the devil knows how to do well. Like the Bible even says that the enemy comes disguised as an angel of light. He does a great job of telling you, oh, this is all these things you need to do, and this is the way you need to live, because this is going to be better for you, because you're being limited because of A, B, C, D, E, F, G, L, M, N, O, P. And if you take away A, B, C, D, E, F, G, L, M, N, O, P, when we can get you to here, you won't even have to worry, because it's just your trauma that's stopping you from living your best life. If you remove your trauma and your pain memories, if those things are gone, if you remove those things, then you won't be second guessing anything. You'll just be going straight into everything. And that's great. You won't be worrying about, should I ask my boss for a promotion? You won't be worrying about, should I go and join the gym, or you'll just go and do it, right? But then you also won't be worrying about the things that you're doing and how they're going to consequentially affect others, or even yourself. Because what if all of a sudden one day your thought is, I've always wanted to get a tattoo, and today I just feel like getting Ryan Gosling tattooed on my back, my full whole back. Maybe not the greatest idea, maybe not the greatest thing to just be going straight to. Maybe the process of thinking before acting is actually a good one. And can I just say that for myself in particular, in my observations from other religions, and then also the Bible and God, it is so important for us as humans to stop and think about stuff. Think about what you're doing. And this is what I love about God, is God literally gives you time to think before you do. He literally says, even if you look in the New Testament, it's when Jesus says, count the cost. You must count the cost. You must think about, when you decide to be in this relationship with me, make sure you have an understanding of what that means. Make sure you have an understanding of what it means to live as a living sacrifice every day for God. Think about it, read about it in the Bible, and know what you're getting yourself into. God has such a respect for our free will that he's like, utilize it well. It's the same with Adam and Eve in the Old Testament. If you eat from this tree, you shall surely die. Why is he saying this to Adam and Eve? Why is he giving them a piece of information? He's saying, think about the consequences of your actions. Don't just go straight into, oh, but the fruit looks good and it tastes good and it this and a da. Focus. Stop and think that if I eat this fruit from this tree, I shall surely die. That's what God is telling you. Think about that. Because when you do stop to think about things, guys, can I just say, I'm so maturing as a person in this horrible season that I'm living in. But I really have been thinking about this a lot for myself, because, I think that, like I said, in life, consequences are consequential. As in, there's certain things, once it's done, you can't go back. I'll give you guys an example of something that is really has a chokehold on a lot of people in society. Is anger is one of them. A lot of people will very quickly run into anger as a solution for what they're feeling or thinking at the time, completely blinded. But the consequences of that anger on the other side, oh, I felt entitled to, you know, to do this, but I pushed them too hard and now they're dead. Or I felt entitled to do this, but now this information has been leaked to my boss and now I've lost my job. Like that moment where you stop and think and actually think, wait a minute, do I want to, is it worth the consequences of me just doing this? Maybe not. Maybe not. And sometimes, can I also say that sometimes God, you can use also our pain and trauma and past in a positive way, in a very, very positive way, like that can actually protect us also. I'll give you guys a perfect example from my own life is that, you know, based on the things that I went through in my own life, let's just say this. I never envisioned myself being comfortable naked in front of anyone. Like, never. I just could not see. I had such a horrible viewpoint of sex at some point in my life, which is one of the reasons why I have so much to say about it now, because I've talked about it a lot with God. The issues that I had that are related to trauma of things I went through actually were a protection. Sometimes God uses things as a protection because it kept me from being, as they call, a 304. Because it's like me just casually opening my legs for who, what, where, when, and how. Not going to happen. Not everything is something to just run straight into. Not every decision, like, and this is what I'm saying is different about like Scientology, which is a religion, and God. Scientology in and of itself is a Satanism. It is lawlessness. It is, oh, I'm going to say that whatever I want to do, I'm going to do it. Right? That is literally the law. That is literally the only doctrine of Satan, which is do what thou wilt. Do whatever you want. Like, do whatever you want. And Scientology is only trying to get you there more quickly. They're only trying to get you to do that and not think. Like, to do that and not have any second guessing. Do what thou wilt. Think about this. Here's a question to ask. Here's a good question to ask. What if L Ron Hubbard? What if L Ron Hubbard, I think his name's like Laurent or something. I can't remember. I did ask the lady in New York. I will definitely post some of the footage, by the way, at least, guys. I'm so annoyed at the strategy that I went for. I wish I went for a different strategy of the things I decided to, the fake scenarios that I brought up. That's basically why I'm going to bring it, because the fake scenario, like I'm just learning a lot of stuff at the moment, guys. Anyway, what if L Ron Hubbard just decided that it would just be a fun, sick joke that he wanted to do to see if he could convince everybody about all of this? Like, what if his version of just doing whatever he wants was like, well, I'm going to just dominate. I've been observing the human race for however long, and I'm now just going to dominate them. And I'm just going to create this religion. I'm going to get everybody to believe what I'm saying. I'm going to see how far I can go with this thing. Because why not? YOLO. And that's the energy he gives off to me, by the way. He doesn't give off the energy. Like some people out there that I've seen, some leaders and some people in the world, they mean well, but they're just in the wrong, you know, they just lacking in certain truths, but they mean well and they're sincere. Like, I feel like there's a lot of, you know, in the Catholic Church, which I'm very much against because I believe Catholic Church is a modern day version of Baal worship at the higher level, but at the lower level, in a lot of these average Catholic churches, I truly believe that there are sincere people who are genuinely love God and genuinely love people who are trying to help people. Also, there's also not those things happening at the same time. But for L Ron Hubbard, he's somebody that I don't see as sincere at all. In fact, the reason why I say that is because listening to his interviews, anytime where he's spoken, he does this thing that a lot of politicians of today do who know they're getting away with just murder at this point, which is laughing. Laughing because it's like he knows that people are going to hang on with every thread to everything that he is saying, and he knows what he's saying is nonsense. Because think about what do you think his actual like revelation or understanding of observing people actually was? Because I have a legit opinion about this. I genuinely think that L Ron Hubbard, because all the observations he's made of humans are the same observations I've made, but there's only one observation that he has made that I don't believe he has focused on. And it's because it's his opportunity to have humans in a chokehold. In all his travels, all the places he's visited, because when I was in New York, by the way, and you guys will hear this in the footage I will upload, because this footage I'll definitely upload, the one from the videos that I was listening to about him and about Scientology, that one's definitely going up. He traveled around the world, and he got to observe lots of different cultures. But one of the things he talks about, and he doesn't go into it, and again, this is where when you don't believe in things of the spirit and spiritual things, you are at a loss because you will not be able to see what I'm about to tell you. So he went to a lot of these places around the world where they do a lot of these worshipping of other gods. And the reason why I find the worshipping of other gods fascinating is because the worshipping of other gods requires things like rituals and sacrifices and all these things. And the paranormal, the supernatural taking place. That's why, although those of us in the Western world, those of us in places like Europe, the United Kingdom, even the United States, even places like Australia. Tell me if anybody from Australia, I know I have at least one person here who's from Australia. Shout out to you if you're watching the video, by the way. Don't necessarily see this blatant, crazy, supernatural, paranormal stuff unless you're in the right environment. In places like Africa, Asia, South America, this stuff is a lot more commonly seen. People know about stuff. Like a lot of Asian cultures, they believe they came from gods. Like the actual rulers of these countries believe they are descendants of actual supernatural gods. In fact, I looked into all of this when I was looking into Japan, for example, and Kaguya and all these things, because it's actually a full-blown belief because of watching Naruto and also because of just my life and just my interest, that in Japan, there's a whole thing about the gods and how the gods came to be. And there was this god and that god. And the names of these gods and all these things are used oftentimes in things like anime and all these different things. When you're hearing these types of names, Kaguya is the only one I can remember right now, who is also a character in Naruto, and all these things that are these gods, right? So he's gone around the world and he's seen this stuff. He's seen what I believe he's not telling anyone, or he never maybe told is enough. Obviously, there's so much to look into for Scientology, so I can't say this for everything, but this is just what I'm observing. This is just what I think. From my observation of humans, is that we will always make somebody our God. Somebody or something will always become our God, because I believe that God designed us to have him. And therefore, when we do not have him, we fill it with another void of something else. And I believe that L Ron Hubbard truly did what he did in order to utilize the opportunity to become God. To become a god to so many people. That's what I'm saying, it's Satanism, because that's Satan's thing, right? Satan was not happy with being at number 2. Wasn't enough. He was like, I have to overtake. And it's like, that's why I say it's Satanism. He was not comfortable with, he had to become the god. And that's where we're at now. Because when I was even in every time I've been around anything to do with Scientology, and this is what I found so fascinating, and I continue to find it fascinating, is that wherever you look, whether you go to the physical places, right? New York City was a huge place for Scientology. Whether I'm in Edinburgh, which is smaller, but still has everywhere, all you see is books, articles, pamphlets, DVDs from L Ron Hubbard. That's the only name. And then we tried to say, like, I know that the belief, the thing that he says is the origin of us as humans, is that we all lived on a planet 75 million years ago where there was a galactic overlord called Xenu who kicked us off due to overpopulation, and we ended up here. Something went wrong, which is why we're not our perfect version of ourselves, but we're humans. We're Thetans, in human bodies, right? That's his whole spiel. Why do I try to speak sometimes? Anyway, point being, that's what he says out loud. But let's be real. The truth is, because even when I talk to these Scientology people, they talk about L Ron Hubbard like how I talk about God. They talk literally about L Ron Hubbard, like how I talk about God, like he's amazing, like he did this, and he did that, and he did all of this and all of that and all of this, that, this. I'm just like, he is your God. L Ron Hubbard is the God of Scientology, not Xenu, not whatever. The Xenu story, even when he told the Xenu story and I was watching him in an interview, it was hard for him to keep serious. This man looked like he was laughing. You know why? Because he knew people would eat it up, because he knew how desperate that we were as humans, and we are as humans, for a God figure in our life, whether we admit it or not. He knew it. He knew it. He's observed it all over the globe. He saw all over the globe how people do this type of stuff. Maybe I should become a travel blogger. My gosh, that could be so cool, because then I can go and show what people are doing around the world. That might be an idea. Maybe that's my story arc I need to be investing in, right? So he showed that that's what he was, to me, that's my observation. As a scientist, as a believer in God, as a person who likes to observe humanity and observe, because my thing with God, and like before I even started looking into Scientology, I realized, I was like, oh gosh, everybody wants to have a God in their life. I know that everybody has a God. Everybody has a God. Your God might be money. Your God might be Beyonce. I'll never forget the day at cheerleading, guys. Before the cheerleading competition, I remember I was at my last cheerleading competition. I remember I was like, I'm going to pray. Does anybody else want to pray with me? Because I pray before everything, by the way. That's part of the reason why I think I win at a lot of stuff. Because I was thinking about this yesterday, that I pray before literally everything. I pray before all my videos. I pray before everything that I do, whether it's sports, whether it's dance, whether it's everything. The only thing I haven't been praying as much for before is my lessons, which I should remember to do that. But anyway, I was like, I'm going to pray before my lesson, the cheerleading competition. At the competition, we're like, when I say pray, we're like off stage. We're like, maybe two teams are about to go on to the mat before us, and we're like on the mat, like we've done warm up. We're like really about to go on. And that's always when I pray, just before you go on, like when I can see the stage. And I prayed, and everybody decided to join in, which I thought was really odd, but cool. I was like, cool, let's do that. So everybody joined in. We stood in a circle. We all hold hands. We pray before we go on. I prayed for everybody before we went on. And then somebody was like, let's also pray to Beyonce. So then there was like a little subsection of people who went to have a little circular prayer to Beyonce. And I was just like, everybody's got a God. Everybody's got a God. Some people's God is science. Some people think, oh, science is logical. And yes, science doesn't hold up on its own. Even L Ron Hubbard acknowledges that. L Ron Hubbard actually values spirituality greater than science. Science is the thing that gets people in the door with Scientology. Like with Scientology, that gets you in the door. Even the lady from New York, she's like, yeah, we're all, this is all logical. Like that, I like this because it's just logical. It's just science. But the reality isn't even that, because the reality is that we believe we're thetans, which are spiritual creatures, and thetans are the highest level of spiritual creature that ever existed, and we're the supreme beings, and together as all of us as thetans form our God together, like all of this us being gods. It's giving New Age. I'm just like, so it's not even about the spiritual thing at the end of the day. It's about getting you in, getting you to sign the billionaire contract, taking advantage of your weaknesses, taking advantage of your desperation, taking advantage of your vulnerability, taking advantage of your state in life. The fact that all of us have areas of our life that need improvement. They've got a program, plan, and something for any area of your life. I understand why people get caught up in Scientology. I now understand. That's why the reason I got into this all in the first place, because I couldn't understand why people would fall for this, but I get it. I get it. Like from talking to them, from telling them like real stuff, and then from also telling them not real stuff, and the same thing. I get it. They're like, we've got the answers to everything. The answers are just to go straight from here to there, we want to remove your reactive mind so you don't. But actually thinking about stuff is what gets us somewhere. Even if you think about choosing a God. Because I was watching a video, guys, and on this video, it was a guy, I'm not sure if he used to be Muslim, but it seems like he was, because he knew a lot about Islam. He could have just studied it, was talking to a gentleman who was now part of Islam, and was basically bringing to his attention that, did you know that girls as young as 9 years old can be married and technically forced to having sexual intercourse without consent, according to the very people you have been quoting to me that you support in Islam? When faced with these things, the gentleman then decided actually to give his life to Jesus, which, praise Jesus, right? My point is that at the end of the day, a lot of these places, religions, whatever, they take advantage of the fact that people don't know what's really going on and don't study it. And that's one thing about the Bible that I love. There is one book and there is one God. There is one Holy Spirit. There's one Jesus, which are all one God. Right? And we're all in agreement. Whatever year, decade, universe, nothing has changed. God is the same yesterday, today, and forever. The same God every day. And I love that. That's something to trust in. You know what I'm saying? Not just this. And also, it's more logical. The Bible is far more logical, even scientifically proven. Follow everything. Everybody who's thriving and winning in life in any way, shape, and form, always what they're doing is a godly principle that they have utilized. Always. It's godly principles that why how people succeed, whether it be, anyways, if life's a game, let's play to win, guys. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. I don't want to talk for too long. God bless you all, and I'll see you in my next one.